photo ID, when they ask for that, you're going to say, I don't have that, I have this. Or the poll workers are going to say, well, do you have one of these? We just had an election up in the city of St. Louis on July 11th. Of the people that voted, 91, I believe it was between 91 and 92% of the people used their driver's license. About 6% of the people used their voter registration card. So the second most common thing is that voter registration card. That voter registration card is not a government-approved photo ID. That's what we call a secondary form of documentation. If you use one of the secondary forms of documentation, when you will have a form that you sign. It's a statement, and it has 3 statements about Missouri law. But the first one is, it says under Missouri law, you're supposed to use your government-issued photo ID to vote. Well, that's part of the law. It says, number 2, you don't possess that government-issued photo ID. That's what you told them today. I don't have that, but I've got something else. And the most important statement is number 3. Under Missouri law, the state of Missouri will provide a free government-issued photo ID for you for the purposes of voting if you don't have one. I mean, you have to accept it. It's not like we're going to force it on you. But you sign that statement, and you'll go ahead and vote in the exact same way. It's not a different type of ballot. You go ahead and get that ballot just as if you had given your driver's license, and you'll go ahead and hopefully vote with it. Now, the great thing about that statement is that statement is required to be kept by the election authority for 22 months under federal law, and we will use that statement. We will find every individual that signed one of those, and they will get a letter from my office. It will not be a bill. It will be a request and an offer of our assistance in getting that free government-issued photo ID. Previously, there had been thoughts of sending out multiple letters to every registered voter in the state of Missouri. That would have cost millions, would have cost over $1 million probably to do that. What we said was, you can vote even if you don't have that government-issued photo ID. Why don't we say either people that call us, go onto our website, or when people vote and don't have that, let's reach out to them. I know your state senator has one. I know your state representative has one. I don't need to send myself a letter. I have one. But let's use the taxpayer dollars to find those individuals that don't, and specifically reach out to them and make sure they know that the state of Missouri not only will provide a free ID, but also the underlying documentation necessary for that. So like that birth certificate, maybe that marriage decree, there are about 12 different documents you might need for getting your driver's license. Not only are they for free, but the Secretary of State's office will go get them for you. We've have an agreement with the Department of Revenue, have an agreement with the Missouri Department of Vital Records. We've reached out to other states and other secretaries of state to make sure that we have agreements in place. And who do we call in your state if we have someone that was born in Montana, or someone that we need that marriage certificate from Louisiana? How do we get that so that we can get someone that ID if they need it? If you look at maybe this is a better picture, we're going to we have posters like this that we've sent to all the election authorities that show the types of ID. These are included in options 1 and option 2. We wanted to make sure that what we set up here was that if you're a registered voter, you can vote. Option 3, though, is entirely new. Option 3 is for that individual that comes in to vote. Maybe they're like me. They have little kids, so they're never quite sure they have the cards in their wallet that they think they do. So they're about to walk in, they pull out their wallet to check, and they drop it. They're a little klutzy, and they kick it into the storm sewer. It's election day. It's too late for them to get a new driver's license. The polls close in 10 minutes. But they're a legally registered voter. And we said that if you're a registered voter, you can vote. So we have what are called these provisional ballots. There have previously been federal provisional ballots. Those were ballots that were only required by the federal government to be used in federal elections. And they were for individuals that had proven their identity but could not prove that they were registered to vote at that polling location. These are required in all of Missouri's public elections. So not just federal, not just state, but we'll have them the availability for local elections. And what we have is, this is actually not the ballot itself, but the blue provisional ballot envelope. An individual that does not have any form of identification, but when you look up their name, you say, oh yeah, that person is registered to vote, they can file a provisional ballot. They'll fill out the outside of this envelope with information. They'll sign it down here. We have them fill out the outside of the envelope because once they vote their ballot, we put it inside the envelope. We don't want to use the ballot to determine who they are because that shows how they voted. We want to determine all that without knowing how they voted. After they've filled out this information, there's a little tab they can pull off that has a numeric code on it that matches the numeric code on the envelope itself, almost like a raffle ticket. You give half to the person, you keep half, so that the individual that votes this has a numeric identifier that they can reach back out to the local election authority to make sure that their vote got counted. You are required to give a sample of your signature when you register to vote. And just as we compare signatures on initiative petitions and referendums, you might have seen people at a sporting event or at a large store or something like that collecting signatures. The local election authority compares those signatures to the voter registrations for initiative petitions and referendums. If you do not come back to the polling place before 7 o'clock to prove your identity with your ID, the local election authority, once those polls close and the ballots are taken back to the main office, they will compare this signature to your voter registration. And when that voter registration signature matches this one, under state law, this ballot must be counted. There have been concerns with federal provisional ballots that they're frequently not counted. Generally, that's because people weren't actually registered, so they're not supposed to be counted. But to allay concerns that people had about whether or not their vote would count, if the identity is proven, it was already verified that they're a registered voter. By statute, the vote must be counted. And part of our follow-up and audit of election authorities will be to get the number of provisional ballots that are cast, the number of provisional ballots that were counted or allowed, they counted, the votes counted, and then the number that weren't and why those weren't. So that people hopefully can look at these three options and realize that as long as you're a registered voter and go to your polling place on election day, you can know that your vote will count. And that's what we want people to know.